How's it going, everybody? What's up? Moses here. And today I stopped in the middle of kind of like an expedition to talk with you a little bit on how to level up a character in Wolcen. Um, it's not very difficult. As a matter of fact, it's very intuitive. It feels very good to level up a character in Wolcen, but still, some questions come up. And since I'm leveling up this character right now, I'm already level 57, but essentially just finished up the story around level 40, and then these recent 17 levels are a result of maybe a couple of hours of gaming, not too much. Okay, so like reaching level 60 is pretty much where you need to be. At level 60 you can equip any item in the game because level requirement is 60, and you also unlock the modifiers of the skills. So basically, how did I level up? I picked up a character, it doesn't matter which, because the only difference is essentially the starting skill you get, whether it's going to be melee, ranged, or caster, spellcaster. But in Wolcen, skills drop as items called anoracts. I don't think I have one in my inventory. I do. Anoracts are items that you can, right click on, and then you have the skill, and there's a finite number of skills, of course. You can sort them out over here. These are like dagger only skills or dagger pistol kind of skills. These are spells, these are bows, and these are melee. Okay, they are all enabled by the type of weapon you equip. So it doesn't really matter what you choose at first, because these skills are going to drop, and you simply can change your equipped weapon or offhand to enable spells, attacks with a dagger, attacks with a bow, attacks with a melee weapon, sword, and so on. So that's basically it. So these drop in the game. Just right click on them, learn the skill. I suggest you learn all the skills as they drop. Because everything is super customizable, and you can change everything on the go simply by, if you want to change to a melee character, you just pick up a melee skill, put that on your right click, just drag and put it over there, as easy as that. But yeah, when it comes to actual leveling, stuff you should probably know around like on the tree. What I did with this character is picked up the strongest weapon I had, which is just leveling weapons. Anything as strong as you can find. I was, I got to the vendor. The vendor got me an offhand, like a level 2 offhand. I got kind of lucky. That was like 200 gold or whatever. And then I had some flat damage to spells. And I equipped a pistol, and that enabled bow attacks. So for the leveling, you can use Havoc Orb. It's an excellent skill. I was using Railgun, Death Gazer Railgun. It's this one right here. But you can really use any of the skills. It doesn't really matter. Havoc Orb is really strong. Once I got to maps, I tried it out. And throughout leveling, throughout the story, I was using Railgun. Throughout the story, my character was mostly dealing damage with spells, but later on, spell damage kind of like fell off, and the attacks became more, prominent. So Havoc Orb is now my main source of damage, and I'm using damage to attacks on this weapon rather than damage to spells in the sockets, right? So right now the spells I'm using after the story are just there to generate me rage, right? So I'm using a fast casting consuming embers to generate my rage, and then I spam my rage, and these hit very hard, and these blow up the monsters very hard. Though throughout the story, what I was doing is basically I used a bunch of cooldown spells, and then I was using Railgun to dump the rage and convert that into willpower, because willpower was my main source of damage. So Bulwark of Dawn should be on your bar. It's great. Currently, Bulwark of Dawn deals area of effect damage around you. This is the spell. Deals air effect damage around you. Later on, it will follow you wherever you go. So it's like a circle of damage that also heals you, gives you buffs. But it's very strong from the very beginning. Increase the skill duration, cooldown, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to level up that thing. Another great spell I was using at first, probably until the middle of the story, and then I changed around, was Thunderstrike. I put that on my right click. I messed around with Tear of Athelia a little bit. Really nice skill. I got it even to level 53. Really nice skill. Deals a lot of damage. Definitely can scale that up later on, even with this character. But yeah, mostly the skills are totally interchangeable. Feel free to change them up. It's very easy to just pick a skill and go with it and start, looking at the modifiers. But for the tree stuff that you should know, pretty much at every character, I guess I do. If it's like a rage based, you want this node right here, rage generated on kill. So if you're picking up a melee character, what you really want to do is to go out through the soldiers, heavy blows, get into that crit over here, and then go to ferocity and pick up maniac slaughter and appetite for bloodshed. This will give you that rage on kill that will keep you topped off. Another thing is you probably want all the crit that the tree can provide, and there are limited areas where crit is concentrated, so you want all of these crit nodes over here in Assassin. This is global crit nodes, not necessarily for spells or for attacks, but over here you have the crit damage and wildcard with a bunch of crit chance. Here you get attack crit chance and spell crit chance based on what your character is. You can choose to pick up these really strong nodes, and as well over here you have some crit, some more crit. So these are like kind of like the things Alistair cluster that you should pay attention to. These are kind of like the things I would go and choose first, right? If you're also kind of like a projectile character, then over here in Ranger, what do you know? There's a really strong node, pierce to all projectiles, that's spells and attacks. And then over here you get some attack speed, projectile crit chance, more projectile crit chance, and here you get a big projectile pierce to everything. So very nice node without any kind of drawback. Over here we get +1 to projectile with a -50 to all projectile damage. This is not a multiplier, it's a decrease, right? It's not a less multiplier, it's a decrease. If you're coming in from Path of Exile and you understand these differences, it's still kind of a hefty chunk that you lose, but you're gaining another projectile. And since I'm using Fireball, getting another projectile from that, and then Havoc Orb, I think it's definitely worth taking. But again, feel free to choose it or not choose it. And then later on you'll need some defensive stuff. Dire Juncture is really strong, and yeah. Over here we got the actually this one's really strong too, the 50 attack speed, 50 spellcast speed. Okay, so make sure pick up that pretty much for every build, right? And these are kind of like on the first circle on the tree, so it's very kind of like easy to get to. Over here, not so easy to get to, but since you're picking up crit, you're going to most likely go through the spell damage and 8% global damage and pick up the max willpower and rage. This helps you out a little bit with resource management early on, since only around level 60 items start to drop with like good values of rage and willpower cost reduction for your resource management, and transfer time between willpower and rage and resource cost reduction. I think I have here. That's a level 50 item. Nope, I don't have it here. I should have it somewhere. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, there's a transfer time reduction. These are kind of rare before level 60, and later on you're going to be getting these more frequently. So until that happens, a little bit of extra max willpower and rage can go a long way. And I also go out of my way to get these as well. I mean, actually, it's not that out of my way. It's actually pretty close. So a couple of max willpower and rage nodes over here. And Dire Juncture a little bit later. Things don't really start one-shotting you until you reach, the early, maybe the mid, maybe even, the late stages of veteran difficulty, which is like the first bar of your expeditions. Outside of that, not too much. It's pretty standard across the board. So unless you're like going for element, an ailment build from the very beginning, which I haven't tried. I think like the safest until you start getting gear is to scale with crit, and then worry about how else you're going to scale your damage. But yeah, this is basically it. Pretty much every character you're going to level up is going to have these. If it's an attack character, you may want to get into not Siegebreaker. There's another cluster. Yes, Arms Master, right? If it's like a melee attacker, there's like damage with one-hander, damage with two-handed weapons. Over here, instead of the points that you're going to get into projectiles in Ranger, for example, that I'm taking right now with the Pierce and the additional projectile. So instead of that, you're going to invest these points over here. But essentially, this is like the major change. And then after that, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. Another thing, especially early on, the stats provide a global damage increase. That's something you should pay attention to. Right now, I'm level 57, but early on, you know, stats are very, very meaningful. So these 25 toughness, agility, ferocity, toughness, and then wisdom, toughness, these 6 points at the very inner circle of the tree are in fact pretty potent. And you should be very aware of maybe picking those up throughout leveling. Aside from, you know, toughness will give you more life, ferocity, more crit, agility, more cast speed, and attack speed, definitely useful. The actual bonus they give you is, you know, something you should consider. Like even right now, I actually just now leveled up, so let's pick up this node just so for you to see the increase. It's 112 almost percent. Let's pick up let's pick up an agility node for a little bit of extra cast speed and attack speed. So 512 went up to almost 520. That's 8%. Alright, so that's significant. It's not game breaking or anything, and of course when I have way lower stats, the impact will be much greater, right? The more you have, it takes more to make a dent in your character's like overall damage output. But early on, you're not going to have any stats, so 25 is actually a huge number. Pretty strong stuff. And yeah, so that's like basically it. Outside of that, the tree is fairly small. All right, so just hover over the nodes and see what could work out for the things that you're trying to do. And always kind of like, you know, every couple of levels, kind of like stop and think, okay, I'm here now. I reached, for example, the leech node. I reached, you know, my rage on kill node. What is like my plan for the next 6, 7, 8 levels, so you'll know kind of like throughout the leveling what is your path and all that. They still haven't added a way to regret your points. You know, there should be some like, you know, gold cost based on a level or something like that, a way of regretting your points. So if you allocated something accidentally, you can, you know, respec without having to completely respec the entire tree, just like 1 point. But hopefully they'll put that back in. Hopefully they'll put a search bar so we can actually look for stuff. And yeah, actually one last thing that you should be aware of are all resists. They're actually pretty strong. You have 3 all resist nodes right here. Very, very strong nodes right here, guys. Once you start stacking some all resists, a multiplier to your all resist is actually incredibly strong. On my warrior, if you've watched my previous build guides, I managed to get to well over 80%, 80 to 85% damage reduction through resistances alone. So incredibly tanky. Imagine reducing all the damage you're getting from all sorts of attacks by 80 to 80% with roughly 20,000 to all resistances. And just for you to compare what I'm talking about right now, this character is, you know, just a baby new character, and my damage reduction is roughly 50%, 45 to 50, with about 2,000 to all resist. So just add a little 0, and all of a sudden this damage reduction becomes 80 to 85%. It's massive. Massively noticeable, and it makes the job of stuff like Dire Juncture even easier, because you know, it's much easier for you to recover and to remain sustainable in a fight. Another several nodes that offer, you know, this is a nice kind of way over here. Less dodge, but if you're not scaling dodge, you're getting 20% to all resists, and then here we got some life and crit damage, more all resists, more crit damage and life, and then more all resists. So these 5 nodes are pretty strong once you pick up these two, Siegebreaker and Elevated Gain, that are also incredibly strong. But these are only in the kind of like late game. Obviously, it's going to take quite a few more points to get to. But when we're talking roughly level 70 character, it's doable. And if you have 30, 40 hours to put in a character, you'll reach level 70 most likely, and that's where you will be. So these are things you should probably consider. Picking up a heavy chest and a heavy helmet and get the double resistance bonus, and scale your resistances with Siegebreaker and Praetorian, kind of like all resist nodes right here. Some life, 15, I believe these are like the strongest in the tree, 15% life nodes. There's 3 of them right here on the other side. So yeah, this is kind of like how to level a character, just to give you an idea, an introduction of the Gate of Fates, which is the passive skill tree of Wolcen. Hope you guys learned something, and good luck leveling up your characters. Thanks for watching.